Alleluia, Alleluia. Everybody sing Alleluia, for the Lord has risen, it is true. Everybody sing Alleluia. 30 years he walked the land. Alleluia, Alleluia. To all in need he lent his hand. Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia.
Hello, welcome to this playlist, which is devoted to an analysis and better understanding of the Second Vatican Council. And we've been discussing the first document of the Council, Second Concilium. Now, if I had planned these videos further in advance, I would have released this one on the first Sunday of Lent. And that's because for Byzantine Catholics, that date marks the Feast of Orthodoxy and the triumph over the Iconoclasts. Though the current crisis in the Church is unprecedented, there have been some bad ones in the past. The heresy of the Iconoclasts is one of them. It raged for about 100 years in the Eastern Church, and it affected about half of Christendom. Iconoclast means icon smasher, and the Iconoclasts managed to gain the ear of Emperor Leo III. The emperor published an edict declaring images to be idols forbidden by Exodus, and commanded that all such objects in churches be destroyed. At once the soldiers began to carry out his orders, whereby disturbances were provoked throughout the empire. There was a famous picture of Christ over the gate of the Palace of Constantinople, and the destruction of this icon provoked a serious riot among the people. Germanus the Patriarch protested against the edict, and he appealed to the Pope, but the emperor deposed him as a traitor. The Pope at that time was Pope St. Gregory II. Before he'd even received the appeal from the Patriarch, the emperor sent him a letter commanding him to accept his edict, to destroy all holy images in Rome, and to summon a general council to forbid their use. Pope St. Gregory answered with an explanation of the difference between holy images and idols, with some surprise that Leo didn't really already understand it. In his response, Pope Leo described the lawful use of, and reverence paid to, pictures by Christians. The most steadfast opponents of the iconoclasts were monks. The emperor therefore saved his fiercest persecution for monasteries and eventually tried to suppress monasticism altogether. Monasteries were destroyed. Monks were put to death, tortured, or banished. The iconoclasts began to destroy holy relics too, and they broke open the shrines and burned the bodies of the saints that were in churches, and some iconoclasts even rejected the intercession of saints. An ecumenical council, the Second Council of Nicea, was called primarily to address this heresy. In regard to icons, the council decreed, "The more frequently they are seen in representational art, the more are those who see them drawn to remember and long for those who serve as models, and to pay these images the tribute of salutation and respectful veneration." Certainly this is not the full adoration in accordance with our faith, which is properly paid only to the divine nature, but it resembles that given to the figure of the honored and life-giving cross, and also to the holy books of the Gospels and to other sacred cult objects. Indeed, the honor paid to an image traverses it and reaches the model, and he who venerates the image venerates the person represented in that image. The council continued issuing anathemas concerning holy images. If anyone does not confess that Christ our God can be represented in his humanity, let him be anathema. If anyone does not accept representation in art of evangelical scenes, let him be anathema. If anyone does not salute such representations as standing for the Lord and his saints, let him be anathema. The council specifically included statues among the images that are dogmatically protected. Now, if you're following along with the Ascent of Mount Carmel playlist, you know that the use of images is a good thing for beginners during prayer and meditation, and when we're ready, it's time to put them aside. So I don't want anybody to be confused by that, because St. John tells us that there will always be times where we must use images, such as during intercessory prayer. So, it would seem that the matter was resolved for all time. But then the Second Vatican Council happened. Article 125 of Sacrosanctum Concilium said, "The practice of placing sacred images in churches so that they may be venerated by the faithful is to be maintained. Nevertheless, their number should be moderate, and their relative positions should reflect right order, for otherwise they may create confusion among Christian people and foster devotion of doubtful orthodoxy." So Sacrosanctum Concilium says that the number of sacred images in churches should be moderate because otherwise their existence would cause confusion and be of doubtful orthodoxy. Implicit with this statement is a belief that in the 1960s, at the time of the council, there must have been some churches where the council fathers thought there were too many statues, and the council fathers wanted to reduce them to a more moderate number. Otherwise, this article doesn't make sense. And for this to appear in the council documents, it suggests that the council fathers felt this was a commonplace issue that needed to be addressed. But was this a problem anywhere? Have you ever seen a church or a picture of a church with too many statues? Do you think it's possible for a church to have too many statues? And please feel free to post your opinions below because I'd like to hear from you on this. But most importantly, does this article of Sacrosanctum Concilium seem to violate the spirit of the Council of Nicea? To suggest that having many objects in a Catholic Church is of doubtful orthodoxy seems contrary to the 2,000-year-old tradition of the Catholic Church. Does it seem to you that Sacrosanctum Concilium was inspired by the Holy Spirit? I submit to you that it could not have been because the Holy Spirit doesn't contradict itself. But wait, there's more! Getting back to iconoclasm, why do you think Emperor Leo supported the iconoclast heresy? Emperor Leo came to the conclusion that images were the chief hindrance to the conversion of Jews and Muslims. But, of course, as we know, iconoclasm did nothing to lead to the conversion of Jews and Muslims. But what does this have to do with Sacrosanctum Concilium and the Novus Ordo?
On December 4th, 1963, as we've noted, the Second Vatican Council adopts and approves Bonini's plan for changes to the Mass. So what were Bonini's thoughts about the changes in the Mass? His own thoughts, him personally? We must strip from our Catholic prayers and from the Catholic liturgy everything which can be the shadow of a stumbling block for our separated brethren, that is, for the Protestants. This is the guy who formed the new Mass.
So, of course, the Novus Ordo didn't result in Protestants converting to Catholicism any more than iconoclasm resulted in the conversion of Muslims and Jews. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this installment, and I hope you'll join us again next week when we come back with another one. But in the meantime, please pray for the church.
Thank you.